Let's start the party.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Hey, lovelies. How are you doing? We're back again. Hopefully this sounds better. We're looking for your comments in the chat to see how we sound, to see if we sound okay or not. We've got more in the chat still. Hey, Jane. Hey, Lady C. Sorry, it's live, right? Things go wrong. It's just the way it goes. That's the way it is. Hey, Zombie. Hey, Mandy. Oh, we've got quite a few in the chat. Okay, let's run this up and see what the panel sounds like, shall we? Okay, panel, let's get down. We're going to go from Ed from the top for now. Ed, what does the UN Global Compact mean to you?
Oh, this is going to take all night. But to sum it up, it's going to hurt me in the wallet. Society's going to look different. Our customs are going to change. Working hours are going to change. You're going to have to accommodate a lot of different religions. There's going to be more strife coming in. Oh, it goes on and on and on. We're basically killing our own country with it.
Well, there's a damning one. And Gary, what does it mean to you, darling?
Well, the UN Compact, I've been reading it for several days now, and it goes far beyond, a borderless country, and the UN, an outside entity, will be bringing in people without our permission, without, we have no say. The UN will have say. That big time bothers me. But this compact goes far beyond just immigration. It has tentacles like an octopus on all sorts of subjects, and including, censorship of the media. Actually, they'll be taking courses on what they can and can't say about the UN Compact. It's just a horrible document.
Okay, no problem. So the audio seems to be okay. And what else have we got? Let's go down to LearnShare in the US. What does the UN Global Compact mean to you, LearnShare?
First of all, shocking. The more I read into it, the more I'm learning how much I did not know was how many laws were already passed without my knowledge, without most of my friends' knowledge here in the States and abroad. Why weren't we informed? This is unbelievable.
That is a really good question. Why wasn't we informed? It's one of those things as thank goodness for citizen journalism. That's all I can say, really, because the mainstream of just like it's just a quick story on page 32 of a newspaper. It is absolutely outrageous. I think I've said hello to everybody in the chat. Hi, guys. We had to do a second run because we had tech problems. What have we got next? Prometheus, what are your thoughts on the UN Global Compact?
I'm sharing a lot of similar views as Ed and Gary and Knight and Learn. And most people I think that I speak to, everybody's appalled. Everybody's shocked at the little bit of participation they've had as far as discussing the compact before it was actually voted on by the federal governments. I take it a little step further for myself. I try to be very open and discussion orientated with topics, but when we've been shut out without any kind of input or meaningful input being recognized by the governments, I'm done appeasing them. As far as I'm concerned, I have little to say or little to offer in forms of discussion until they start practicing what they preach. All these same people that are pushing this are not dealing with the effects of it. They live in gated houses. They have armed security. They have taxpayer-funded, buffers to offset the cost of the changes that Ed was talking about, for instance. None of this affects them, and they're making decisions that affect me and my countrymen and really all over the world without our input at our cost. We're paying them to do this to us. I'm done appeasing them. I'm done discussing it until they start practicing what they preach. Like I don't feel that we can compromise anymore. We just can't. It has to be a zero policy. It has to be a complete shutdown, in my opinion.
Okay, no problem. And Nanon, what are your thoughts on the UN Global Compacts?
Yeah, I'll just echo what the rest of the panel have just discussed. I think the main issue here is zero consultation with anybody, no mainstream media coverage. The double speak within the document itself is very scary. The other thing about it is that along with this comes a whole raft of cloaked and veiled, what would you call it, consequence and really, really dangerous precedents being set.
Oh, we lost Nanon there. So we lost her there. Or you finished. Scott Fire down in Australia there. What are your thoughts on the UN Global Compacts?
Well, first of all, there's a few things that kind of flashed out at me, first of all. And of course, the first one was Agenda 2030. And then it was just full of buzzwords. It was written in a very easy to read language, I've got to say, but there was a few buzzwords in there like gender equality and empowerment and lens of victimhood. So I agree with Shenanigans in that part, that there is a lot of double speak in there and buzzwords just to kind of make it easy for people to get dragged into it. But as everyone else has said, you read between the lines, it's culture side. They basically are committing culture side in every sovereign nation. And also, what's going to happen to the countries they're coming from? If everybody's coming to first world countries, I don't understand how that works.
That is some brilliant points there. Let me say hello to everybody in the chat. Mandy, Yassis, Pamela, Wishfix, One Flew Over, Paul. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for your comments. I'm just going to grab some comments before I go to the next one. Epicus. Hey, Epicus, how are you doing? It's been a while. It is a continuation of the purposed genocide of white Euro. God, that is so tiny. What does that say? Christian Western world. The globalists are using ISIS to kill off the record of the Bible. Wow, that is a damning statement. It is an attack on morality and faith. That there are some damning comments in here, guys. It looks as though we're all on the same wavelength. Hugh Just says buy a gun. Pamela says we were never asked. That's a fact, Pamela. Wishfix agrees. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Africa belongs to the Chinese. Keep it on subject, guys. Paul Stammer, all planned many years ago. Very sceptical, Paul. Mandy says Wishfix. All right, okay. Keep it to the panel, guys. Hey, MacTavish, how are you doing? We need yellow jackets in Canada. We did a video on it. Right, here's one. I'm going to throw one of the bulletins. I'm going to throw it to you guys, okay? And I want to throw together number 17 of 23, okay? And number 17 says this: eliminate all forms of discrimination and promote evidence-based public discord to shape perception of migration. That is so damning to me. Ed, what are your thoughts on that?
Isn't that just a line out of the Communist Manifesto? Basically, we're being censored, being told what to think, how to think, what not to think, and we're going to go to jail for it. It goes on and on and on. They're putting financing into the universities and schools. There's film festivals all about this propaganda right now. They're trying to bend the perception of reality for people. It's groupthink. It's 1984-ish. Like, how does it get any worse?
It is
and I'm going to jail because of that.
Sorry, Ed, I thought you'd finished. Fred, what are your thoughts? UN Global Compacts.
I'd say congratulations. You are all now members of the entire world, and you can turn in your passport and get a UN passport. Good luck.
classic Fred there, guys. All right, let's do a free run. Let's see where this goes. So one of the damning statements for me, so you guys talk amongst yourselves, pass it to each other, keep an eye on the chat room, so please watch the YouTube chat. I'm going to read that one out again. Eliminate all forms of discrimination. What, they're going to go into light speed and move humanity forward 500 years, and promote evidence-based public discourse to shape perception of migration. And I would like LearnShare to start this off and pass it to someone when you're done, and so on. LearnShare, please.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say personal sovereignty is at stake. Whatever you truly believe in, that is what is real. We can all agree here, right, wrong. The responsibility we take on individually, which with myself I can speak, is God, family, nation. Sovereignty, I see this as a direct threat.
Yeah, I'd like to come in on that point there. It's now. Okay, that point is perhaps the most scary of all. Already in Ireland, what we have is the universities. The universities are preparing programs that detect what they perceive to be hate. They're designing what hate speech will. Also, the NGOs are very important in that scenario as well, because this entire program has been rolled out by the NGOs. So we need to start looking at the NGOs and what gives them their mandate and where their funding is coming from. Now, already with this debate, we're seeing things like sexist, racist, white supremacist, fascist, Nazi. What else? All those other labels that are being shoved around the internet for people who have who like to discuss something, who may not, who might have an alternative view. So I just like to say that I personally will refuse all of those labels. I think it's just a way of feeding into this hate speech, which will be monitored on the internet. And also the second point is that these migrants are afforded rights that are, what would you call it, labelled in this document, which I don't think the citizens of the countries involved have the same right.
I'm just going to pick up on this number 17 that you read out, Ria. If I read it again and then give you my thoughts on it, it basically says, eliminate all forms of discrimination and promote evidence-based public discourse to shape perceptions of migration. What I read into that is that they are going to use essentially the mainstream media, newspapers, TV, whatever, to basically paint a picture where we have to be kind of accepting of the migration and to go against it in any way, shape or form, basically put you out on the limb. And as one of the guys said earlier, you open yourself up to potential arrest or prosecution over it. But it basically, to me, reads as if they are going to use any form possible to promote the migration, whether it's through the mainstream media, as I've said, or through YouTube, where they're maybe putting stuff on there, or Facebook or Twitter. There's just going to be a lot of information out there to try and brainwash into thinking that this is a good idea. That's kind of what I read into that number 17. Over to you guys.
Yeah, I could, if I could, I would like to sum this up for this, exactly for what it is. And this is kind of delving into the use of language, which can be good for reading the whole of this document. But this whole sentence contains three essences to it: doublespeak, groupthink, and doublethink. And if I give you the definition, doublespeak is language used to deceive through concealment or misrepresentation of truth, understood in more than one way. So it's not an absolute. Groupthink is approaching problems or issues by consensus of the group rather than independent individuals' conformity, i.e., you decide, we don't get to vote on it. Lack of individual creativity and sense of responsibility. And doublethink, acceptance of two contradictory ideas or beliefs at the same time, deliberate, perverse or unconscious accepting of conflicting facts or principles. That sentence encapsulates the three of them in one, and the whole document as well. And that's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to continue, as you say, through the media with just gobbledygook.
That itself has echoes of the 1984, George Orwell's 1984.
Exactly.
The Ministry of Truth. If anybody has ever read that book, it's almost like a blueprint for what's happening right now. And I might add as well, the narrative in that document also has put by it that any mainstream media that goes against, or any media that goes against this narrative, will be defunded. It's actually written there in plain sight for anybody to see. But I think the main point is the powerlessness of the way people feel so powerless against this. Despite the fact that there are petitions and there are some discussion, but it's very much on the alternative media. And the reason it's not on mainstream is because hang on a second, I just have some. Yeah, there is even the document itself contains words like let's see now, just one sec. I had something here now from the actual document itself. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Compulsory measures, legal instrument, and the hard sell. And actually that comes from another it may not be widely known, and I don't want to confuse the conversation here, but I just want to add something. That this Global Migration Compact is also accompanied by something called the UN Refugee Pact, which we here, the Irish researchers have only discovered this quite recently. And the website there is thevoiceofeurope.com, which carries the information on that. And that is that we still need to dig into that. So according to this website, and I can't vouch for it 100%, but those two separate pacts, the UN Refugee Pact and the Migration Pact, are both due to be signed in December. So it might be even worse than we think.
I noticed that there's a theme here within the panel today, and it's one that echoes like a lot of different groups that I get involved with when we talk with these kinds of things. And there's a lot of good information that you guys are putting out there as far as identifying the actual core issues within the compact itself. What I can't help but come back to all the time is that, we've been here before on some scale or another, right? We're repeating the problems. I mean, we talk about some of the books that come out, like, for instance, 1984 or Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, like all through history, there's, like you guys have said, they put it out there for us to know. We just, because of the legalese and the text they use, we just mostly don't pay attention. And the big thing that I can't help but notice is that when we focus on the minute problems within the problems or within the compact itself, we're overlooking something else. I mean, we haven't had privacy, right? Like we talk about these things that they do it without our permission, without our consent, without our involvement and all this. And it's always been that way. That's the funny thing, is that this is not a new problem. And the difference is that when they now are so bold and blatant about it, to the point where they don't care that they don't care that that you're paying for it in all ways, through your security and safety, through your economics, through your emotions, through everything. You know what I mean? That's really coming to the tipping point where they're getting, things are coming to a head. So the Migration Pact itself is going to have some really damning repercussions for us down the road, just like it always has through history. When we look at what we can or can't do, I mean, what do you guys think on the panel, or for those of you that are listening, what do you think our best defense is against this? Like, what's like your gut instinct? What is it telling you?
I think initially, sorry, Lancia. I think initially, our initial thoughts are, I mean, there are petitions out there. There's one just past 100k mark in the UK to go before our Parliament, should they find the time to read it, whilst Theresa May is getting grilled over the next several days. I think for all of us, in whatever country we reside, by signing petitions, at least it's getting something across to the respective governments, how people are feeling about this. At least they're getting to know. I mean, in terms of other more direct action, I mean, how can we go about that? I suppose we can look to the French and the Yellow Jackets as an example, get out there and protest on the streets. And I don't think in the UK particularly, there's a big movement towards direct protest. I mean, there has been in the past, and it takes something really strong to get a movement going out there. It's getting the word out and getting people connected to meet up. It's a difficult one, but while I was reading into this particular document.
Well, the awesome thing that you just said, Knight, sorry to cut you off, I thought you clicked off. So it's that I really feel that that's the thing. We all know this. We all know the problems. We all know, we talk about this, we share information about this, we discuss it amongst ourselves. But I really think that the biggest thing that comes out of this for the average Joe is that they're now learning just where their place is. And I think that's what's going to create the biggest backlash against something like this, and be our biggest defense, is that now that guy that just didn't pay attention before, things were good, or he was too busy, or whatever, he's now basically being told point blank, you don't matter, shut up and feed. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to really, really lend some weight to the folks that might not have been awoke to the situation prior. They're now coming to the point where they're realizing that, did you actually just say that? Like every time our prime minister, for instance, in Canada, goes and does something publicly, the next 12 hours minimum is about, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. Oh my God, did he actually just do that? Oh my, you know what I mean? Like people are, every day average Joe, it's this thing here, this global compact has created one of the biggest stirs within the average Joe, or within society, as any other issue we've been dealing with for the last, say, 10, 20 years, in my opinion. It's caused the biggest stir.
Just picking up on what, sorry, Jen, just quickly, I'm just going to finish off what I'm saying. I pressed the mute mic, unfortunately, previously, but the only other direct action I can think of, and it may be a similar setup in other countries. I mean, in the UK, the parliamentarians all have their own constituencies where you can actually write to them directly, or make an appointment to visit that MP in your region and actually have a face-to-face with your member of parliament. I mean, if you're able to get your view across, assuming they can fit you in, because I'm sure they're pretty busy at the moment. But that's another way of having direct action, to actually get in front of your own member of parliament and let them know what you feel about it. Up to you, Ed.
If we look at this as a kind of comparison to what the EU is, the EU is really just a blueprint for this. It's a trial run on a microphone, and we can see how it's destroying Europe at the moment. So, that's the way I think the rest of the world ought to think of it. Look what's happening in Europe. It's going to happen in your towns and your cities and in your country.
Yeah, can I just come in there? The point about this global migration compact and the other one as well is that it's been handed out to countries so that each country can then adjust their legislation to facilitate this. They're saying it's non-binding. That's the double speak part of this. But it's a blueprint being sent out so that each country can adjust their legislation to facilitate this. So you're right.
If you look at what happened to Tommy Robinson, he was just reporting the facts, but the perception on immigrants was negative. Why do you think they were shutting them down so hard, so fast, throwing them in jail, kangaroo courts?
Yeah.
It's a joke. That's what's going on over in Britain. And we've got similar hate laws that haven't been used in 100 years, and suddenly they're using them on a daily basis almost. And they're using lawfare to shut down anyone that is dissenting. They're priming the country for this. Anyone that's speaking out against immigrants or the negative effects that a certain society might be bringing to another society, they're shutting that down, and they're doing a good job of it. The courts are in on it. The Crown attorneys are in on it. It's just mind-blowing. We're seeing it already, and this is just the start of it. Can you imagine what it's going to be like once this is passed and ratified?
When sorry, Nan, I was actually going to refer to you. You were saying a moment ago about double speak in some of what you're reading into this document. I happened to read into a fair portion of this, and a little way into the document, which is the second section of this, it says objective. The heading reads, minimize the adverse drivers and structural factors that compel people to leave their country of origin. I thought that's an interesting headline. When I read into it a bit, and this is where the doublespeak comes in, or they're trying to paint a different picture in this document. It's basically saying they're looking to keep people in their countries by providing them with all sorts of benefits, education and anything to improve their livelihood in particular countries, to dissuade them from leaving their countries. And in the second part of that page, I was reading down, and it gave reference to the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. And I thought, what's that? I've never heard of that before. So I opened up that document and started having a read into that. And essentially, it refers to UNICEF, which is obviously a wing of the UN. And it refers to extensively in that document the children, and it kind of points towards Africa in many regards, and looking after the children in Africa and educating them and bringing them up to our level of education. It would seem, reading between the lines. So you find when you read through this document, other references are made. You've then got to go and seek that particular document to see what they're actually referring to specifically. But you're getting here, on the one hand, the overall document is saying it's going to be open borders and a free-for-all, basically, for these people. Yet, buried within the document, it's saying quite the contrary, i.e., we're going to educate and look after these people in their own countries. And it would seem to me they expect first world countries like the UK, US, Canada, Australia and the like to actually fund the bill. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, we're paying hard taxes to go and educate these people in these third world countries, put a roof over their head, educate them, medicines, benefits, God knows what else. And to me, it's just a way of almost bankrupting first world countries, because this is going to come to a lot of money over a period of time. What do you guys think?
I would like to say, first of all, think each individual, comprehend the fact that you do have a choice to think for yourself. While reading this, I'm seeing what I would call a nullification by the simple fact that they did not ask. They went ahead and passed laws underhandedly, under the table, hence nullifying this contract. I could be wrong. My way of thinking is American, but this is my gut feeling on this.
Well, as I said about it being pretty much the same as the European Union, it's the European Union is bureaucrats that make up the laws. These people aren't voted for, and we have no jurisdiction of kind of saying, no, we don't want to do that. So it's essentially that in a global form.
Can I just come in there on that question there that Night and Day posed about why would they want to bankrupt first world countries or reduce sovereignty and democracy and all of those things that we work for. So you just have to ask yourself that question, why? And I'm going to put myself out there because I struggled with this for a very long time. And with regard to the ins and outs and all the different points of these documents, they're all rabbit holes in themselves. As was displayed there, by just going down, you dig deep down and you find out, well, what was said about that, what was said about this. So I reckon there's something else behind this, and I have no proof as yet, but looking back in history, you know, when this created war on manufactured terror was, you know, back in the 9/11 days or whatever, you say to yourself, why would they do that? Why would they create a terror and then underneath that banner implement various things like the Patriot Act in the States, and a lot of surveillance was brought in at that time, and a lot of those things that they wanted was brought in underneath that banner. So we have to ask ourselves now, what is underneath this particular banner? Because this is the biggest thing we've ever seen. This is global. It might have been territorial in historical times, but this is actually global. So if they create, my theory is creating some type of chaos that will warrant a one world sort of solution to be brought into, so people will be begging for safety at some stage of the game. And when that happens, when the chaos is bad enough, again, they'll bring in, oh, we will come and rescue you. You know, we'll provide your safe place now, and hence, and that'll be the eventual one world order, one world government, whatever. And that's not conspiracy theory. Just what to call him? Bush just died. The Pappy Bush just died this week. And if anybody wants to go and Google New World Order, One World Government, you can actually find all the presidents talking about this. So they're out there telling us what's going to happen, but there's very few listening. So I'll just pass it back at that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there, and I do think that it's conflict that is going to ensue if this went forward to 2030 as they're imagining. And yeah, it would definitely, you know, if you crash the markets and stuff like that as well, which would inevitably happen if there was chaos, then you're begging for money. It goes to one currency, blah, blah, blah. It's exceedingly 1984. It's so much murder in it at the moment that it's scary.
Sorry, hi guys. Just what you just said a minute ago, and Anon. I mean, basically, I think at the end of the day, everybody knows truly what this all this stuff is about. It's basically about subjugation of the people, so they can basically get on with what they want to get on with, and just, you know, they need everybody under certain control or dominance. So there aren't any arguments. I mean, that's what a lot of these things are all about. It is purely subjugation of the people. That's my opinion.
You got to ask yourself, who wrote this? It was written by the UN. We all know the UN is dominated by Islamic countries. We know the UN is controlled and run by Saudi Arabia, basically. The Americans have had the forethought to step out of certain parts of the UN. And we've got our idiot Prime Minister here in Canada, Mr. Trudeau, and he's pushing this agenda. And he's flying all over the world. He's going to profit from it because he's one of the elite. And what does he care? He's a multimillionaire. He's going to make even more money when he crashes the economy here. You're going to have a whole bunch of people living as serfs, basically can't even complain about it. And if they can bring in enough strife and cause civil war, well, then you can enact a police state, and then they can do whatever they want, however they want, and they can stay in power as long as they want. Now, the Americans are smart enough to see through this, and luckily they've got a good leader with Mr. Trump.
Thank God.
What's happening. Thank God. And us as Canadians, we're going to be the neighbor you don't want to have 20 years down the road. It's coming.
It's like that with some of us British people here too.
Can I just put a question to Nanon? Nanon, you posted a couple of days ago a list of countries, I think there was 17 or 18, that were not prepared to sign this migration thing. Where did that list come from? How did you come across that information? Because I've not seen it advertised, well, not call it advertised, but I've not seen it published anywhere else apart from the list that you put up. I mean, where was that information derived?
Do you know something, Night and Day? I think that list was like a graphic. Came to was a list of countries of that the petition was attached. So actually, the list of countries refused. But I can tell you that the major countries. Is that clear that list I published was got to do with just underneath that there was something like 19 or something petitions from various countries, you know, where you could access what your country was. But the main ones that have refused are the USA, Australia, Israel, Poland, Hungary, and some of the Eastern European states as well. Those major countries have refused already to sign this. And if anybody wants to look at the statements of the leaders of those countries, you'll get some credible quotes as to why they refuse to sign. So we're not pontificating here off the top of our heads with unsubstantiated opinion. It's all out there in black and white.
Well, we have a new Prime Minister in Australia, and that was one of the first things that he has done as a Prime Minister, which was incredibly surprising.
Unfortunately, in the UK, with everybody's heads stuck in Brexit at the moment, this is just another one of those things that kind of slips under the radar and just doesn't get noticed by anybody in the UK, unless the likes of us and Ria and people who like to go digging for information and getting it out there come across it. Because to be honest with you, it wasn't until very recently that I actually knew this thing existed, and it'd been going on for some time already. And of course, when I start digging into it, and then there's the Addis Ababa agreement, and there's probably several others when I've read through the rest of the document, there's just been such a lot going on over the last, 2, 3, 4 years that a lot of us were not even aware of. So I'm really happy that this information is getting out. So collectively, somehow, some way, we can actually do something about it.
But that's how they do things, though. I mean, it's sort of like if they've got an agenda to push, they will come up with other distractions, so people are too busy trying to get their heads around the stuff that is going on, that they've flipping put out there for us to be distracted by, why they can push it through without any complaints and arguments or backlash. That is how they work. They've always worked that way.
Excuse me, I'd like to speak now, if that's okay. Excellent. I would like to point out what I would call what is becoming obvious to me is we are constantly being perpetually inundated with propaganda, just perpetually. So what we're dealing with is a large amount of people that are caught in that frame of thought. They can't deviate out of fear, irrational fear that's been implanted as a form of control. Okay? Conscious awareness is our enemy's biggest fear for a reason.
That's interesting, Manshaw. Yeah, one of the other things that's coming out of this, and a couple of us have referred to it already in this conversation, is this situation going forward, if this ever gets passed, where you could be arrested or prosecuted for even talking about it, let alone going against the idea of it. And again, it's just a further erosion of our freedoms. I mean, we've already seen a hell of a lot of erosion in our freedom of speech. And should this thing get passed, it's just an addition on top of what's already out there with regards to the restrictions that are being placed on us. What do you think about that one, guys?
These restrictions are already happening, like I said earlier. And just to add, Bulgaria has confirmed that they will not be joining the Compact on Migration. They will not be signing. So you got Slovenia, Croatia, Italy, Poland, Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, United States, Australia. And oddly enough, has anyone heard anything about what China plans to do with this thing? And I'd be surprised if Japan signed on to this, because they don't like foreigners coming into the country at all. So how about the China question? Has anyone heard anything about what China's going to do with this?
I got wind of Russia and China not signing up to this either. I've got wind of that. I don't know how true that is. I think it'll probably need a bit of research by one of us here to go looking for that information. But I kind of got wind of it that they wouldn't be into this. I mean, look at the population in China. Yeah, could they take on another few million? Yeah, they probably could. But they are such a closed shop in every way, shape and form. I can't imagine they'd be wanting to let a lot of immigrants into the country that were not necessarily even speaking their language. They just wouldn't go with that. And I think it's the same for Russia. I can't imagine that they would sign up to this. Over to you guys.
No, considering China, for the reports, I mean, I know they're sort of they're kind of clamping down on certain other things in certain other ways, but as far as I have seen so far of China, is the fact that they see immigrants as a disease, and they've quarantined like 1 million immigrants or something already. And as for Russia, I mean, there is no way on earth. I mean, there's no way on earth that it would even get past the post with Russia. But China, certainly, they look on immigration, the amount of it as a disease. So I really can't see them signing it either.
Can I just I just wanted to come up with some figures there as well. That there's UN documents out there at the moment where they've actually divvied up the planet as such. And I know for a fact that according to the UN, Ireland is capable of taking 65 million people. We currently have about 5 million, so 65 million. So bye-bye Ireland. The Sweden is capable of taking 440 million, and Germany is estimated to have a capacity, I think, of 274 million people. Now, the repercussions. This is on a UN document. Now, we're not going to have 65 million coming in here, but it just goes to show you that the work has been done already by the UN to basically move all the peoples on the planet. Now, as somebody mentioned there are certain countries that will not allow migration. And the other thing is, the other aspect to this as well, push the ideas through to their bitter end. That I'm wondering what's going to happen to the Irish. Will we be allowed, or the English people or the Canadian people, will we be allowed asylum, to seek asylum maybe in a country that and given these rights when the time comes for us to be I'm not going to use the word obliterated, but
I personally can't see anybody. Sorry, shenanigans. I can't see anybody from a first world country being given the option to move elsewhere. To be truthful, because it seems heavily loaded towards people of a third world country being given that option. I mean, I was reading further into the documentation here, and one of the paragraphs basically says, collect, analyze, and use data on the effects and benefits of migration, as well as the contributions of migrants and Diasporas to sustainable development with a view to inform the implementation of the 2030 agreement. But in other parts of the paragraph, it's talking about data collection. Basically, I mean, what I read into some of the subparagraphs of this document, they're looking for a way to collect data on everybody that's looking to move in each of the countries. And I'm thinking, well, hang on, how are they going to do that in Africa when they probably don't even have a births, marriages and deaths registration in most of these countries? How on earth will they ever know who's moving and where they're moving to? Because there's no recorded information about any of them. So it amazes me how they can put these paragraphs in such an important document when how they're ever going to implement it, it seems to me impossible. Yeah, all right, in a first world country, because we do register everything, but in some of these third world countries, that just doesn't exist. What do you think, guys?
What exactly is sustainable development?
Sustainable development is a buzzword in the Agenda 2030, and it involves things like smart cities, commandeering common agricultural or common public-owned parks and forests and bogs, as what happens in Ireland. There's a whole thing about sustainable development. So that's one of the cloaked words that you need to look into, that word, because it's a word that carries behind it a whole set of policies designed to say, for instance, private housing. It's involved with the planning in cities, people owning private housing. It's involved in how we take care of our old people. Like, there's disincentives for family homes to remain in the possession of old people.
Yeah, exactly. It's a totally loaded word that people don't know what is behind it. I mean, that list could go on. And when people read it, they just think, oh, solar panels and windmills.
Yes, I have something to share with you. Think test cities, test areas. They've practiced this, and now they believe they can move on with it.
Okay, guys, let me just jump in there a second. If you're just joining us, this is Ria Bow with a panel of 10 from UK, US, Canada, Ireland, Australia, and we're discussing the UN Global Compact and what it means to this panel of 10. And all you lovelies in the chat, thank you for joining us today. And one of the issues that we've had a look at this document. We have, I've read every word of it. So one of the key problems that I'd like to put in there is about, first of all, to fix the problem, you need to know we have a problem. And one of the problems is we've got the issue within the document. We've also got the systemic issue of governments that won't tell us that this is going on. So you take a look at the UN Global Compact, and as Night and Day says, all of a sudden then you find the one before it, and the one before it that you didn't know about, and the one before that you didn't know about. So there's two problems here. One is what's written inside the compact, and two, the system problem that they're not telling the people that they're going to all of a sudden change the way we live, because this is a huge document. So guys, anybody want to jump on that comment?
Well, not that particular comment, but what I was going to say, Tim Cook, I think he's the CEO, has recently received an award for his fight against hate speech. Again, another UN thing. And the fact that we're just discussing it here openly, had the UN got their way sooner than this, we would actually all be accused of, or this conversation would all fall under the hate speech, and we'd all be getting a knock on the door. What do you think about that, guys?
One thing I do want to ask, though, I had an interesting what's the word, meeting sort of to a degree earlier on. It was basically at school. It's actually through Facebook, but there's a friend of mine. She's sort of she's pretty like-minded when it comes to stuff like that, and she's seen me posting this petition for ever since we were aware of it. Basically, I've been posting it every single day, resharing it 2-3 times every single day for the last 2 or 3 weeks. But she asked me, it's sort of like, well, it's sort of like I know that it's not a good thing, but sort of what roughly is it about? Bearing in mind this was on the school run, so I didn't really have a lot of, I had barely any time to even begin to try and explain it to her, because there's so much in it. But I said to her, sort of like, well, you need to kind of look it up for yourself. But if for any reason she didn't do that, is there a way that I can kind of get hold of just like the bulletin points and sort of post them through to her? Obviously she's a busy mum as well, like me, but it's just she's very, very aware of these things, which is a good thing. But she's very, very curious about everything that this particular thing entails. And it's just I'm not very good at explaining stuff to people. So I wonder if you guys could possibly give me any suggestions on how to kind of shorten it for someone to understand, or just sort of pick out the main points of it. But it's still very, very confusing for me, even though I understand what it's all about. But it is just a question of getting it out there and continuing to get it out there.
Basically, sorry, Nate. In a short version, it's essentially throwing the world into big mega cities and using all the rest of the lands for farming and resources and all the rest of it, while everyone lives like rats in a cage. That's essentially it.
For me, I've been talking about this for the last few weeks with people I've been meeting when I've been out working. I had an occasion yesterday. There's a couple I did some work for, and again today, a gentleman I did some work for. And basic way I put it across, and you may have heard this phrase before, and it's keep it simple, stupid, KISS. Now, basically, the way I put it across to people is when I get into this conversation with them, basically I say, would you be happy with anybody from any part of the world coming into your country with no restrictions? And in addition to that, if you were to say anything about that migration, you could be arrested. And the look I've got from a few people, it's almost as if their jaws hit them. And of course, they want to know more. So you open up with a couple of simplistic things like that, and it just gets their attention, because it's a big no just on those 2 points. Yes, you can go into a lot more detail if you choose to, but just on those 2 points alone, that's going to get people's attention. And of those people I've spoken to in the last few days, each of them have gone online immediately. In fact, the guy I was with this afternoon working, he went online while I was there to sign the petition in the UK. They were unaware of it, totally not heard of it. And again, it's like those in here in the chat room, those that we communicate and obviously I have communications with, we can get the word out to an awful lot of people. We really can. And I say it was a small amount of people from me alone this last few days, but you know, I'm one person, I've spoken to several, and each and every one of them have gone online immediately and done something about it by signing the petition. Yeah, they may not be proactive, they may not go out on the streets and complain there, but they've done something, and you know, that's a step in the right direction, and they are now more aware of what's really going on out there. So I think in terms of getting it out to people, yeah, keep it simple, stupid. A couple of simple facts that gets their attention, and then they start to want to know more. So that's the way I deal with it. I don't know about the rest of you guys. How would you do it?
Well, I mean, that's sorry. All I was going to say is sort of like that's pretty much what I did with my friend. It's sort of like basically, you know, unquestioned, you know, sort of like more migrant, unquestioned immigration, like more and more people coming into the country. And basically, if you don't like it, you're the one that's going to get arrested for it. That's pretty much what I said to her. But I mean, I'd like to give her a bit more detail so she can sort of share it with, you know, share it a little bit further herself. I suppose that's all I wanted to say. Sorry, back to you guys.
Let me just jump in there a second, guys. I just want to hear from the people that haven't spoken, Fred and Gary. Let's just hear from them as well, if we could. Fred and Gary, you got any comments on this from your side?
Well, everything I'm hearing right now, I'm right online with. I mean, I can't disagree. All of that is there. There's nothing more I can add, except for one thing that I thought up just now is that that Canada, our government, been working on this document since July. I heard this from the government. I don't know where I read it. I'm trying to find it right now. And at any rate, it was our government since July. So it's only been in the works for a few months. I don't think it's years. That's the one thing that I can say that I'm hearing here.
I can jump in. Sorry, Gary. I heard about the population of Canada going to 100 million. It's about 37 million right now within the next few years. And this came out by a liberal think tank. They're saying how it would be so much beneficial for Canada. We would become a world power once we reach 100 million people here in Canada. And I just couldn't believe my ears. And that was over 2 years ago. Ray asked earlier, a few minutes ago, we have to identify the problem. Okay, I'm going to look at this from the other side. I'm an Islamist. I want to bring a world caliphate in. There's a whole bunch of Western countries that are not dominated by Islam. I believe approximately about a third of the population is not an Islamic country. So let's see how we can take care of this. So you get a few companies that are oil-rich countries. They start putting the squeeze on the powers that be, and let's work on getting this caliphate in. Most of the migrants that are coming in are from Islamic countries. Those are the poorest countries. They haven't worked well. Different culture. They have innately in their religion, or the word eludes me right now, but in policy that you have to do some kind of jihad or you're not going to go to heaven. Migrating is a form of jihad. And Gaddafi warned Europe that if there's ever going to be a problem here with me, I'm stopping all the migration from coming up to Europe. And sure enough, as soon as Libya went down, Gaddafi went down, it was not long before the migrants were coming in floods.
I was just thinking on the back of that, Ed, and something Nanon was saying earlier about the amount of people they're expecting to flood into first world countries. Now, I can only speak for the UK because this is where I live. It's common knowledge that in terms of building houses in the UK, they're falling short to the tune of 200,000 plus a year based on the current population growth. Now I'm thinking, if we're that short on places for people to live, how on earth are they going to cope with floods of other people coming to the country when they can't even keep up with what's here now? The infrastructure is just not there. I mean, what I can see is that over the longer term, if these people are flooding into our countries, it's not a case of bringing the third world up to become a first world nation. It's going to be the first world nations are going to be dropping down the ladder. We'll probably end up in a third world situation because they will just finish us off. We just won't have anywhere to live. There won't be enough jobs. It will be a complete and utter mess. I can't see any other way forward. And that's just the UK and what I know of the UK. I can't imagine it's any different anywhere else. Even if you've got the land to build these properties, you just haven't got the guys there that can actually do the job. So, I mean, what's the situation in Canada, Gary?
You know, it's much the same. That's the way I see it. Canada, does Canada want to become a world power? And do we need 100,000 or 100 million people from the third world to become that power? I don't think we need to be a power in that sense. Our power is how we conduct ourselves and how we created our societies, both the UK and Canada. I mean, we have great countries, and it could be turned away upside down overnight with this compact. And yes, I agree with that too. It's the Hijra. They call Islamic migration the Hijra. That is well documented. You can follow Islam all you want. That is the loudest thing that people can do, or Islamic people can do, is migrate. And then they continue their jihad through the womb.
What are your thoughts on this?
You're absolutely right. Sorry, Nate.
No, I was just going to say, what are your thoughts on this, Fred? I was going to ask you to follow up on that because you're in Canada as well.
Yeah, I'm in Alberta here, northern Alberta. Anyway, you're all absolutely right. But the question is, what are we personally going to do about it? Are we going to join a political party and try to change it that way? Or are we going to protest? Keep an eye on France because it'll die out, and that's the canary in the coal mine. And if that dies out, that tells you that that's not going to work, which means you've got to join a political party and get like-minded people into power. Even though it's painful and long, that is probably the best way to go.
That definitely is a big part of the solution, Fred. I used to tell people when we talk about this kind of stuff, I'd say, look, be like Poland. Anybody that paid attention to Poland remembers the big protests they had when the whole EU was trying to pressure them into taking the migration. And they basically said, look, the government agreed initially. The government was all on board. They were doing their thing. The people said, hold on a second, we got something to say here. And like 1 million of these guys walked down to their parliament and said, tell you what, here's the deal. You can bring them in, you can agree to whatever you want. But when they come, we're not giving up our houses, we're not giving them our jobs, we're not going to give them our food and our money. We're not paying their way. And if they start acting up in public, we're going to just kind of deal with it. And the government kind of realized that they might actually be a little bit serious. And they basically told them, if you continue down this path, we're just going to remove you. We're going to get into a party. We're going to remove you and vote you out. The government has since changed their tune, as everybody knows. And that actually led to a lot of other countries kind of taking a similar path, seeing that even with all the pressures, Poland's still standing pretty strong. And it's a direct result to what you see in France today. The French are doing the same thing. You know, they're joining that direction. And it's the same thing that's needed everywhere. Like when we see these rallies and stuff that we say, oh, well, they work or they don't work. Well, they don't when there's so few people. But I guarantee if, I don't know, a couple million Canadians walk down to Parliament Hill, that would definitely be a message that nobody could ignore, and that it takes that. It takes all these tools. It takes all these things. It takes the discussions. It takes the rallies. It takes the voting. It takes all this stuff to make that change.
Can I just come in there, Prometheus, on that issue that you just brought up there? Because you're dead right, because the society as we know it at the moment, we won't recognise that in a few years, because I just dug there on some stats. Say at the moment, each migrant costs Dutch society 1,150,000 over the lifetime of the migrant. Okay, Germany's federal government spends 21 billion euros in 2016. That's nearly 3 years ago, dealing with the migrant crisis. This year's budget for Germany will grow by at least a third to 8.3 billion euros. So 12 Germans have to work to pay for the cost of one migrant. Given that the median age of migrants in Germany is 32 years old, this means that 3.5 and 3 and that the median age of the migrants is around 32. So 3.5 million age 32 are young, are the numbers and the profile of the people they're bringing in. And the way that society has been skewed by, males between 18 and 25 being the most, it's not sustainable. So if anybody has any ideas about where this is going, I'd be glad to hear.
Can I just pick up on a point Prometheus was talking about a moment ago with regards to political parties? I think a guide to that, you've only got to look at the recent German elections. I think there was, I can't remember the exact count, I think there was 12 regions, or some similar figure to that in Germany. And what's come out of that is they've been labelled a right-wing party, but the party are called the AfD, which is the Alternative for Germany. Now, essentially, the people that are in that party are nationalists, i.e., they want to put their country first, before the EU and before anybody else. And that same movement is growing traction in a lot of other countries. Now, in the UK, it's become a little bit disjointed. I mean, it was UKIP for a while. That seems to have fragmented, and that's a bit messy. But certainly in Europe, that move to the right, taking control back of your own country, is gaining traction, because now in the German parliament, there are a lot of AfD members that actually have some bearing on the power in that country. What I see in successive elections over the coming years, they will gain a greater foothold and will potentially be looking to get rid of any migrants that are in there that shouldn't be there, and stop any others coming in. My feeling is other parts of Europe are already moving along those lines. Hungary have already closed the doors to immigrants. I take my hat off to the leader of that country. He's stuck his heels in and has gone against the grain of what the EU have been trying to do. So what do you guys think about right-wing parties being a route? Obviously, some of them are already established, and I guess there will be some new ones coming along.
I think you're absolutely right.
I to kind of to kind of tap with what you were saying and adding into the whole right-wing concept or the supposed right-wing identity movements that are crapping up. I think that I want to post something. This isn't something that I have like some kind of factual data to back up, and it's one of the rare times that I'll try to opinionate with supposition based in fact. But the days of the Stalins and the Maos and the, you know, all these times where the government really committed mass genocide openly have really come and gone. You know what I mean? We won't see that kind of mentality, I don't think, in the same way as we did before. I think what they're trying to do now, and this is, I think, it ties into the whole migration thing, is that they know the outcome is going to be bad. And we all know that all these guys and the globalists, they want a reduction in population. But if they can't just turn the government loose to go and just mass kill everybody, but they can get us to do it, right? Why not create that chaos theory? It's part of what their formula has always been. Create the situation where that becomes an issue, right? So if they start bringing in 3 times the population of Canada of people that really don't like Canada, really don't like Canadians, really don't like Western culture, they know the ultimate end result is going to be bloodshed, right? They know this. I mean, that's just common sense. So if they do this all in the West and bring all these people in, they know eventually the West will stand up. Either way, what's the outcome? Dead people on both sides, a reduction in population on the global scene, and they're still sitting strong and safe in their, you know, mansions and hideouts and bunkers and all this other shit that they can just sweep in and when the dust settles and take back control, start the process over again. We start back at that one, and they sell it from the concept, oh, we've had too much bloodshed. Let's be friends. Let's hang out. Let's make this work because, you know, everybody's important. We've watched it in history. I don't see why we don't potentially understand that could be one of the things going on now. You know, that it's being driven to that. Is you know, why do we see in Canada certain crimes being committed, for instance, and these same people doing it just happen to be from that one migrant with no repercussions? You know, it's happened in Europe, it's happened in Norway and Sweden and all these places, happening in you know, England and Germany. It's happening in the West all over to that same context. It's okay for them to commit murder and do all these things because, you know, they've had a bad day or mental health issues or they don't understand the culture or it's acceptable in their culture to rape little kids. So he said, I might get killed, but I got to do this. I got nothing else to lose. You know, I think that that's playing into the whole situation dramatically.
Yeah, it's a classic problem, reaction, solution scenario, isn't it? But also, what I want to say that, you know, they use the populist and right wing tags for anybody that's against us, especially in Europe now. And it's not, they're not right wing. I'll guarantee if you went through a majority of the people are supporting these parties or movements, you'll find a lot of them are libertarian or left leaning or whatever. They just have seen enough of the madness. And yeah, it's the one thing that's about nationalism is that all these countries are actually united in their own nationalism, which is a great thing. It should be support. We should be supporting everybody that's fighting back.
I'd just like to say something here as well, that I think probably we need to look into the UN mandate. I don't have any proof for this, but they may have overstepped their mandate.
Oh, I absolutely do, but they use precedents for everything. They do it in our national politics. They do it with the UN too. It's the same people, right? And what they do is somebody was just mentioning a little while ago before I'd had to leave about how, I think it was Ed, and he was saying that they're now using certain laws in Canada, for instance, that are like 100 years old. They've never been used before. You know, they were on the books, but nobody paid attention to them. And all of a sudden now they're rolling it out and they're actually using it quite often. Well, that's how it works. You know, so they set the stage in advance, in public, in front of you, and you don't pay attention. Oh, well, they're not doing that. Don't worry about it. They're not, you know, it's okay. It's just words. Fuck it. And then all of a sudden, it's now cemented in documented precedents, right? And they use all these little things to build off of to justify their actions. Have the UN gone above their mandate? Well, of course they do, because when they make a non-binding agreement that we sign on, so we can say, well, you know, it's non-binding, it's okay, we can choose to participate or not. But what they do is they use all those things, and somebody also mentioned how this current migration compact they're discussing is also being duplicated in a couple months to kind of reinforce the whole thing, right? And when they overstep it, nobody questions it because it's done in a little piecemeal, right? If I just prod just a little bit, you're not really going to get pissed off. If I beat you with a stick, you're going to get pissed off. So I can't do that. It's that slow boil. You put a frog in a pot, you turn the heat up slowly, he falls asleep and dies. You put him in the hot water, he jumps out. So in this case, they just throw a little bit out there. And you start getting pissed off and pissed off and pissed off until it's too late or until you snap. You know, with this, absolutely. When an unelected, an appointed specific elite group of people try to dictate your rights in any country, whether it be the UK or Canada or America or anywhere, that is overstepping their bound. That's not what they were supposed to be. If you look at the UN of today and the UN of when it first created, it's not the same. It's not the same place. It's not the same organization. And that's the problem. When we drop the ball in our politics in Canada, these things are the outcome. When we drop the ball on the international scene, these are the outcome.
Can I pick up on the points you're making there, Premier? Because they're good points. We in the UK and probably most of Europe are very aware that the guys that call the shots in the EU are essentially unelected. They're certainly not elected by the individuals in this country, although we have what we call European members of Parliament, but you know, essentially they're not the people that call the shots. There's an elite body in the EU that call the shots. Now, perhaps in this panel, maybe anybody in the chat room may educate me here, because I'm not aware that anybody sitting in the UN is an elected individual. I mean, who elects these people? Where do they come from? Because I've never seen us in a position to be able to vote for our representative in the EU. I mean, educate me, somebody, because I'm not aware how these people get there to make these kind of decisions, not on our behalf, but for what appears to me, the globalists' behalf. What do you say, guys?
This is coming back to other groups like the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission. And what they do, I mean, all the people that sit on the UN, they are elected officials, but they're elected nationally. So you'll elect your national guys in the UK. And then the leading party at the time who's got control of the chair, right? In our case, Trudeau, appoints his people to act on behalf of Canada's representation to the UN. And then the UN unilaterally makes their decisions based off of, you know, specific interests or directions that is now thrown back at those nations, and they're expected to comply. Now, this gets back to the whole wording and the non-binding concepts and all these things, but in the end, they're not elected. I elected so-and-so to sit in Parliament in Ontario or in Canada to deal with Ontarian or Canadian matters, not to give away my rights to some foreign national that's never actually been to Canada You know, so are they elected to represent us? No, they're absolutely not. They're appointed, and it's usually appointed off of special interest. You know, in this day and age, what we see in all the Western nations is a special interest of the liberal or the left-minded concept, which doesn't represent the people. You know what I mean? And there's where we're having the problem. We live in a global community. We always have. This idea of globalization is not new. Go back 1,000 years, we had people traveling to different countries and trade and this and that. It isn't up to interact with and pay for of your labor. That's the problem. Those being taken away.
Let's just jump in there, guys, so we can pass this round to hear from people that we haven't heard from. LearnShare, do you want to jump in there?
Yes, I want to hear what Ed has to say about this.
Oh boy, here we go. Well, you got my take on the world caliphate coming to Western nations. Yeah, it's true what Prometheus said. It's the standing government sends the representative. Now, they have to make it non-binding, because if they made it binding, that means they'd be forcing it on the whole world. But by making it non-binding, it means, okay, here's the framework. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to achieve it. Take this back to your parliament, make it binding, and make it the law of the land. And there you go.
Thank you. I would like to hear from Fred.
Yeah, you're kind of absolutely right. Rand Paul says Lucy Ambor, well, she's a special kind of stupid in the UN. And I hate to admit she's a Canadian, and she's working on the immigration file, which is not going to be good for us. But I don't know why Rand Paul's not in here. But anyway, that's about what I got to say.
Thank you.
Has anybody been paying attention to the YouTube chat?
Yeah, me. I'm monitoring the lot, but I'm also trying to see that people that aren't speaking get a chance to speak, so they've bothered to turn up. Gary, can we hear from you, my darling? You got anything to chuck in the pot here, please? Gary, you still there? Okay, Gary's gone walkabout. What about Nanon? Nanon, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have loads to say. This whole question is so massive. The UN is the key. The Bilderberg groups and so forth is where the directives are coming from. I'd also go down along the lines of the CFR and the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Committee. You're talking military-industrial complex here, banking industrial complex, big pharma industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. So there is an elite group behind all of this that we don't see. So there is a plan. So I just say to everybody, just go and do a bit of digging. But meanwhile, don't fall down too many rabbit holes like we have, or I personally have, because each one of these things is a rabbit hole in itself. But at the moment, the main thing is this thing is going to be signed on the 10th of December in Marrakesh. And as I mentioned earlier on about the refugee pact as well, which is runs alongside this. So there is a plan. I'd also concentrate on the countries that are putting up some form of alternative measures and focus in on them, see what they're doing. And also to mention before we finish that UK petition has now passed 100,000. Which is fantastic, because I looked at it yesterday, the day before, and there was 57,000. So it's nearly 45,000 in 2 days. So keep that going, because now it has to go to Parliament. And I used to think that the whole political situation, there's no point in voting, and that's exactly what they want you to think. So I've changed my whole perspective on that since this whole thing came about. This new political, just support the people who are out there, the people who've done the research, the people who are out there just support those, because this thing is growing. And I'd love to say that they've overstepped the mark here and that this compact is dead in the water. I'd love to be able to say that. I don't know what anyone else.
Sorry, I thought you'd finished, Nan. Wait a minute, guys. Let's hear from people that we haven't heard from as well. We've heard plenty from Night and Day and Prometheus. Gary, what's on your mind? And then I'm going to take a question that's been put in the chat room, and also Scotty as well. Gary, you next, and then Scotty, please.
So I'm just thinking what we're going to do about all this, and there's some rallies actually worldwide. I believe it's December 8th. That's going to happen. They're in Canada here. We're telling people to line the highway number 1, our only highway really in Canada that stretches across Canada in various ways. But yeah, we're going to line that. We're going to be at the Parliament buildings in Ottawa. There's a rally at the City Hall in Edmonton, rally at the City Hall in Calgary, many rallies in BC by different groups. And I think that, we just have to get people out there and make some good signs, maybe even with information like QR codes that takes you to petition pages that people could snap up easily on their cell phones. We have to make people aware. I know I've been talking to people for the last couple of weeks, and everybody they have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that's the most important thing I could put out there is we have to hit the streets on this one.
Totally. Scotty?
Yeah, look, it certainly seems as though, some sort of caliphate or something could result out of this. Because in a lot of communities already, and I know it's like that in the UK, I definitely know of a few places here in Australia where there's kind of segregated communities and there's no integration, and I could only see that growing if this compact comes in. And yeah, as far as the UN's concerned, I mean, it came from, what was it, the League of Nations or something? It was before it came the UN, and it was all the, the usual players like Rockefellers and such like that were involved in that. So it's these people that are moving the chess pieces, and ultimately, if we want to get anywhere, we would love to take them down.
Learn Chair.
Thank you. This is unprecedented. This is truly historic times that we are living in now. So when people look back, the decisions that we choose, realize we have this choice to work together, to overlook our petty differences and agree upon basic moral principles, sovereignty of self, sovereignty of family, sovereignty of nation, practical application of common sense. In other words, please keep journals, records, notes, etc. We do not want to erase our past mistakes ever again. We don't want them hidden. So this movement, this is an opportunity. If it is solid and true, we can maintain momentum to carry on to where we will be the ones that they turn to. So I hope all of us here are doing our own individual due diligence, accepting responsibility with the knowledge that we are acquiring together, working together, communicating as truly as possible as to not be misinterpreted, That's been the cause of many problems in the past I'm aware of. I've done a lot of research, and I am preparing, as all of us are, and looking forward to the possibilities and preparing.
Okay, let me jump in there a second then. Right, so we got some stuff in the chat. I want to just throw some energy at the chat. So I see your comment, LCB. It's a bit off topic. Maybe we'll deal with it towards the end, but we're coming up on the hour and 3/4 mark. And I want to put a challenge out to anyone listening to this as well. We were speaking in the chat yesterday, and the objective for Sunday Long Live Radio, if you're just listening, this is Ria Bowen, a panel of 10 discussing the UN Global Compact, what it means, trying to understand it and the problems and the issues that go with it. And it opens up such a huge ramification of issues because it can lead you to racism, nationalism, accusations, smearing, hijacking of words and language. It can just go to so many places. But the one thing with Sunday Long Live Radio, we're live all day Sundays, guys, starts at 10 a.m. GMT for those listening on the radio as well, is we're setting out a challenge, and the challenge is this. Sunday Long Live Radio was about reaching new people, like brand new people. You don't know who they are. They're not red-pilled. They're not woke. They're probably politically apathetic. So I'm asking you, we're looking for reporters on the ground to nicely go up to people with your phone, and you're going to represent Sunday Long Live Radio. We already have about 4 so far that are going to do this. It's what you do with your phone, if you're ballsy enough, that is to go up to someone in the street and say, hi, I'm from Sunday Long Live Radio, and we're asking people their thoughts about the UN Global Migration Compact. What does this mean to you? Would you care to share your thoughts? This will be going out on the radio. You do a short 1 minute to 2 minute recording, send it into us, into the chat room, and we'll play it on air. Because this is a real way in the real world to reach new people. We need to get this out because the digital gods, the overlords, are making decisions that a show like this discussing a topic that is clearly off topic. It's a taboo. We shouldn't be talking about it. The digital gods have made it in such a way where they won't let this go out. This has no reach. The radio stations, well, we're getting reach, but not the kind of reach we need. And we've only got about 10 days left. So there's a challenge, guys. If you're up for it, just put a yes in the chat. And I get it if you're not. But we need to reach new people. And from there, I'm going to pass it into anybody in the chat for a free run for the last 15 minutes.
I'm just going to close out on the point I raised earlier that a couple of the guys in here have answered for me with respect to who represents us in the UN. What I deduced from the comments that were coming out was that the heads of our individual countries nominate someone to go into the UN to represent the country. So the way I read that is, if our leaders have an agenda, then the person that they elect to go and represent our countries have the same agenda. That's what I'm reading into that. But while I'm here, and before I hand it across to somebody else, Lone Ranger in the YouTube chat posed a question. And the question is, which war has the UN ever solved? And it's a question to the panel. And while you guys have been chatting, I've been thinking about it. Have they ever won a war? And the only one that springs to mind where they did have some impact was when Yugoslavia broke up, because it became very fragmented and there was literally a civil war going on there, and a lot of people were being killed. There were, at the time, as far as I can remember, a lot of UN representatives in terms of troops from various countries in there to try and quell what was going on and keep peace, which they ultimately did do. So in terms of what wars the UN have ever solved, that's the only one that springs to mind where they've had a proper impact. The rest of the time, the UN have been involved anywhere as peacekeepers, so they call. They're literally driving around in their armored trucks and not making any kind of impact at all. What do you think about that one, Ed?
Thanks. And I know Prometheus is going to jump right in because he's got firsthand experience or near firsthand experience on that. My parents are from Slovenia. I think it was the first country to actually separate from former Yugoslavia. Diversity is our strength. I keep hearing this. Now here you have a white race, predominantly white race, throughout Yugoslavia. They tried sending Serbs to Slovenia, Slovenians to Montenegro or Macedonia, and it just didn't work. So here's a country, a former country that had very similar cultures, very similar languages, very similar writing. The religions were slightly different. You had Catholics in the north, and then as you go farther down south, it goes towards Greek Orthodox. It didn't work in Yugoslavia. How do they think this is going to work in other Western nations where you've got Judeo-Christian values that have been put in place here in Canada per se, and the US and most Western nations? Very common till now we've held it together. And now you want to bring in Islam? Are you kidding me? And when has Islam ever been at peace with any other religion? Whereas all the other religions can have peace amongst themselves, but Islam, it never happens. That's what I got to say with that. Prometheus, you're up next.
Oh boy. Anybody that actually participated in the Balkan mess understands the true ineffectual means of what the UN did. I mean, the people that were there were watching the atrocities happen, saying, hey, we can stop this, we can, get this done, and we're being told directly from their commanders as a direct response from the people, from the UN advisors, that, hey, guess what? We're in peace talks, you stand down. So you witness these atrocities happening in front of you with no recourse. The UN, it's not there for what the average Joe thinks it's there for. It never was. It's directly to come back to control. And most of us know this. Most of us know that these policies we see are strictly to restrict your rights and put you back in the fucking pen where you belong, to put you back in the field where you belong. The behind the scenes things that were going on in Yugoslavia at that time. I mean, Milosevic, he was duly elected. He was a democratically elected leader of the area. The reason why they targeted him was because he backpedaled out of an agreement that was happening with a pipeline, which happened to come out of, guess where? Afghanistan, Iraq, to build that new pipeline across into Europe. Well, this is the whole involvement with bin Laden and Yugoslavia, using the Muslims to create the stir and problem to destabilize the Yugoslavic government. And it works. It always has worked to use that method. And we've seen it happen again. And then all of a sudden people started backing out and this and that because of greed, because of all kinds of issues. And guess what happens? Nothing but death and destruction. The UN, being the supposed peace bringers, again, it's not the UN of what it was originally mandated to do. So it's living off of its history to perpetuate crimes because of the influx of criminal people, criminal representatives within the organization. So it's a shame. The amount of people that were displaced of decent Yugoslavians from the different backgrounds that came to Canada and everywhere else had to disperse, and what was left over, I mean, it's criminal. We see it time and time again. Every country the UN gets involved with, we see this same shit. You know what I mean? And it's a shame. It's a shame. It's such a bigger thing than just one incident or one issue or one event. The migration thing, it's not just a migration thing. The way it plays into all this. And it all comes back to those control mechanisms, and the UN is one of those control mechanisms. It's frustrating. Really frustrating.
Someone else in for your finals, please. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to hand it round for the finals. Ed, your finals, please.
Okay, back to this thing in Yugoslavia. Just so everyone knows, a little reminder of history. I believe it was Slovenia that had one referendum for sure. They may have had two, but I think they achieved something like 93% to leave the Federation of Yugoslavia. And what tipped it off is people in the North were getting quite upset with subsidizing people in the South, or that's the way I remember it. The pipeline issue, I didn't know that existed. But self-determination, sovereignty, this was the root of it. The people themselves, they were getting screwed over basically by the de facto government, I guess it was put in place after Marshal Tito died. And a lot of people had told me 10 years prior to Yugoslavia going to war is nationalism will raise its ugly head again in Yugoslavia. And there will be war. And I was saying to myself, well, I can't see because everyone's getting along so well. But, this guy was a lot older than me. He actually fought in the Second World War and he lived it. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, this UN Compact on Migration, it's leading us down an ugly, ugly road. And who's going to pay for all this? Us, the resident population. We've got people sleeping in the streets. We got vets that are homeless. Why are we spending money on people that have never contributed to the country? They've never paid any debt to society. They've never paid taxes. What is this world welfare we're trying to pull here? I see nothing good of it coming. I know future generations are going to pay heavily if this thing goes through. People got to get active. We got to stop this thing. We got to get the word out. We know there's lots of propaganda floating around right now. We know we're being censored on social media. The newspapers are being controlled in Canada. It just goes on and on and on. We're really got our backs up against the wall. This thing's got to get stopped, and it's got to get stopped now.
Right, let's get in there then. Okay, sorry, because we're running out of time. Fred, finals, please.
Okay, the UN needs to be disbanded. We need Mr. Trump to kick them all out. Shut it right down. The Saudis, they just happen to have all the money because they got the better oil at the moment. But it's only money. Money is not land. That's what I got to say.
Gary, your finals, darling?
All I got to say is all of you people, including myself, you know something, get out there and red pill somebody.
That's a great comment. We were talking about Night and Day finals, please.
Yes, we love a red pill, and I agree. The UN could do with being disbanded, but I personally can't ever see that happening. All we can do is at a local level deal with things in our own countries as best we can, and hopefully the people that we eventually elect to represent us will in turn elect people to go into the UN that do honestly represent the people they're there to stand for. So who knows? Things may change, but it starts at grassroots level. I think with us on the street, getting people out there to know what's going on. Over to you, Luncher.
Thank you, Night and Day. I would like to begin and end with the simple fact that being a part of different group thinks, including this one, thank you, Ria, so much for providing this platform for us to communicate on and share with. There is a common song we're all singing as far as we're coming together accordingly here in the States to do our due diligence to help follow through with the full comprehension that the world is watching. So thank God for our POTUS. When I say ours, I mean the world's president of the United States of America. We are doing our best, and rest assured, this is a long plan, and it's playing out before us masterfully if you are able to observe it and recognize it. Good luck to each and every one of you. I love you. Godspeed, and hold the line. I'm on common ground with you, looking eye to eye, hand in hand. We can do this.
Okay, let me jump in there. Fred, can you hit the mute button, darling? Your TV's coming over everything. Fred, can you hit the mute button, please? Nanon, you're up next, darling. Your finals, please.
Well, I suppose what I'd say is that, you know, that we have a plan as well, and to reject all those labels that are labels and boxes and intimidation that they try to shove our way. This is a global thing. It's almost as big. It's almost as big as the good versus evil. So all the left-right divides and all of that will have to be, you'll just have to get over all of that. This is bigger than anything I think we've seen so far. So just dig deep and, you know, find the qualities that you don't use that often. You can stick with it and stay brave and stay on the side of humanity. It's that big. So good versus evil, I suppose. The future of humanity it could possibly be at stake here. And I don't want to be a negative person. I hope I didn't come across as that. So just to be brave and stay positive.
Prometheus, finals, please.
I can only kind of regurgitate what everybody else has said. I mean, these are all things that are just so important. You know, you guys have a responsibility, your civic responsibility to go out and share the information, to have discussions and debates, and to do your best to try to keep strong and remember that it really is good versus evil. And outside of that, the only thing that I can add is the same thing I keep regurgitating myself, is simply just be that example you expect in others. Be the example that you expect in your government or in your fellow man. Just show them the way. Lead by example. Be that guy.
All girl. Scotty.
Hi. I would like to finish on a kind of personal note, which is actually a kind of example of this whole thing. I'm an immigrant, of course. I'm in Australia. And of course, coming through the official channels, and they wanted to know my complete history, where I've been, what school I went to, who I worked for, everything, my complete history. And then I became a citizen. Of course, that more forms to fill out. That took a lot of time. It took a lot of money, but I did it. And I don't even qualify. I'm a citizen now. I don't even qualify for welfare. And these people are coming in and just getting handed free tickets. Just imagine that in a massive scale. It's horrendous.
There you go, guys. There's your panel. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I want to give shout outs. Right, you guys in the comments in the YouTube chat, put your finals in there because I want to read them out. Jill Coos, great show. Thank you, Jill. Pamela says goodbye. Davius, out of context. Lone Ranger, we are in a world war right now, I think, says Lone Ranger. Damning statement from Lone Ranger. LCB, religious views aside, Cordros is right. Shadow government are the real terrorists. Okay, there's one in from LCB. Jeff, big love to all of you beautiful people. It's been great. You got to spread the love, guys. You got to pull it out and you got to spread the love, you know. Don't forget, you got to do it. That's where sorry, I just knocked my microphone. Hands going everywhere. That's where the healing's done as well. And Rumpole, great live program, great guest. So you got bigged up from Rumpole there. And we got LCB, yeah, great shows, get better every time, says LCB. Space Cat, awesome group of folks here on the air and in the chat. You all make me proud to stand next to. Oh, spreading the love, Space Cat. Love you, darling. Jeff, Space Cat, that's Space Cat. I'll stand and fight with any one of you. Go on, Davis. I agree. Good versus evil. No way out, Ria Bo. So important to be able to think and speak while we still can. Laugh now. Love the show, said Paul Stammer. Wish fix. I'm ready. Hey, compatriots, you lovelies, family of ours. I love you all, you know. Spread the love. The love doctor's in there as well. Look, Noddy is now the love doctor. Look, sharing the love. Oh, putting it out there. Guys, Sunday Long Live Challenge. With your phone, if you got the balls for the job, and we've got to go the extra yard, and I realise that what I'm saying is a conscious decision to go from a consumer with an opinion into activism. It is a decision. So I'm asking you, make that decision. You're going to be representing Sunday Long Live Radio. Go out there with your phone, turn it upside down so the speaker's up there, and record and walk up to someone and say, hi, I'm from Sunday Long Live Radio. What do you think about the UN Global Compact? What are your views? And then from there, hit them with a few facts. And if you go out and touch one person, that will turn to two. Because they'll go, you're not going to believe this. Someone from the radio asked me a question today and I had no idea what they were on about. That will turn to two. That will turn to four. It will go 8, 16, 32, 64, and off it goes. So have a think. Are you prepared to make a decision from going from a consumer of content with an opinion into activism? And I'm asking you, and we're going to do the same thing. And soon you're going to hear the audio on air of lovelies that have gone out to do this from our family because they've gone the extra yard. I say there's a challenge for you guys. I get it if you don't, but I love you even more if you do. We're all going to say goodbye. I love you all. We're going to be here every Wednesday, and at some point this is going to be introduced into Sunday Long Live Radio, where we do an hour or two where we bring the chat on after the hosts from different parts of the world. I love you all. I'll see you another day. And if I don't see you before, I'll see you on Saturday on Network on American Radio, or Sunday for Sunday Long Live Radio. The challenge is out there, guys. Make that decision and go the extra yard. That's what I say. Love and peace always from me, Ria Bow. Bye-bye.